There you go. Magic. All right, Kathy, go. You're
All
good.
right. All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the invitation tonight to talk to all of you about Indian Child Welfare Act. I do things very, very informally. And if you have a question, I would prefer that you like wave your hand at me. I can't see everybody's picture, but in the chat or you get a chance, there's an option, I think, to wave at me or something. I would rather answer your questions as you're thinking of them than to get all done for me to get offline and then you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked, or I was wondering about that. So just very informal. So tonight we're going to talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act. Go ahead.
Hey, Kathy, I'm gonna interrupt you just quick. Amy, yeah, can you see if you can get rid of that start rehearsing box?
Yeah.
It's gonna cover some of her words when she gets going, I think. Do you see it on your screen? It says welcome, see live feedback as you rehearse. Can you see it, Amy, or not?
No, I can't see anything. It just
Is
says
that part of
Indian.
your, was that part of your screen maybe, Kathy?
Nope, that's not me.
Okay, well. Yeah, it's a black box.
Yeah, that's weird that you can't see that.
I know it. What?
I literally can't see anything except it says Indian Child Welfare. And
Well, I wonder if you go back downsize so you can see your computer because it's probably behind something. Because we can see it.
okay.
Yeah,
So
if you right click and hit end slideshow,
yeah, but I don't think she can even see it.
right? But
Oh,
if she-
okay. There you go.
then she can get out of there.
There we go.
All right, now try the slideshow
From beginning. Yeah, there.
right there. Oh, do it again.
Then hit
And-
from beginning. Way to
All
the
the way.
left. There you go.
Is that
There we
better?
go.
There it's gone.
Yes. All right, so you can move to the next slide.
You know what? I'm getting a big blob right in the middle that says this meeting is being recorded by the host or participant.
You
You
have
just
to
have to
click
click
on it,
on it.
Rebecca, and it'll go away. Say got it.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's all right.
I don't know this technology.
All right, so I'm a supervisor for child protection in Watertown. So I'm with the Department of Social Services. And so our vision and mission statement is always dedicated to strengthening families. We want to foster family health, well-being, and independence. So when we get involved, we're trying to give families the skills to become independent and function without us nosing around their business. So we try very hard. So today we're going to talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act. And this information is collected from the Casey organization, who provided us with a great 2021 presentation, and the South Dakota Indian Child Welfare Act Compliance Desk Guide. And that's not just the name, we all have that on our desks so that we can refer to it as needed. So all right, we have 9 federally recognized tribes in the state of South Dakota. So when we talk about here, when I'm talking about tribal intervention, tribal transfer, tribal jurisdiction, ICWA says it must be a federally recognized tribe. And so we have 9 of those in South Dakota. 4 of them actually have their own child protection offices. All right, the basic concept. Okay. All right, so this law, this act came into being to recognize tribal sovereignty and the fact that they are their own governing agencies, and to recognize the important role of tribes to protect the well-being of the children of the tribe. It was also written to respond to problems identified in a state welfare system, which is what we are at Child Protection and Department of Social Services. And Congress recognized the role of tribes, getting them involved in protecting the well-being of children and keeping children connected with their tribal community and culture. This came about as a result of the boarding school eras, those kinds of things, and recognize how the tribes can help protect their children and their tribal memberships. Okay. All right, the emphasis is on protecting the rights of biological parents and extended family. And you're going to find out how important that is as I go through this presentation, because we're going to talk about a lot about extended families, other members of a family's tribe. So it recognized that tribes had an interest in keeping children as part of their own communities if the tribes are to survive and thrive. So if we're removing all the children, again, back to some of the boarding school days, the tribal population itself could dwindle and suffer. So those are things that Congress was recognizing when the Indian Child Welfare Act came into being in 1978. So the tribe has certain rights. When we open a case, say we take a child into custody locally and we started out in state court, we need to notice them immediately. So as soon as a child comes into care, whether it's nights, weekends, whatever, we leave a voicemail, we call, we fax, we send an email, and keep calling until at the next business day until we're able to give them all those forms of notice that we've taken a child into custody. The tribe has a right to intervene, and I'll talk about what all these terms mean as I go through the presentation. They have a right to have the case transferred to tribal court. There are some exceptions, and we'll also talk about those. Or when they have exclusive jurisdiction over the children who are living on the reservation, or if they're already wards of the tribal court. So let's say grandma gets custody through a tribe and she moves off reservation land to, say, Watertown, but the tribal court has retained jurisdiction over those children. That would automatically be a tribal case, not a state case, and most likely we would relinquish that custody at our next hearing. So the tribe may file a motion to intervene at any time throughout the abuse and neglect. ANN means abuse and neglect. That's our acronym. Intervention allows the tribe to be a party to the case. So they get all the court reports from CASA, from DSS, anything else that we provide to the court if we're giving case plans or things like that. Once they intervene, they are able to get all of that information, just like if they were a parent or one of the parents' attorneys or the CASA advocate or the child protection workers. So if we're giving it to the court, we provide it to the tribe once they've officially intervened. The child's tribe may file a motion to transfer at any time, meaning they file a motion in state court stating we want to transfer this to tribal court. Okay, so they need to provide proper and timely notice, or we needed to have provided proper and timely notice to the tribe. So that's why even if we're doing something on a weekend, we're still sending all those notices right away so the tribe can see it first thing when they get to their office on Monday morning, so that they are aware immediately that a state ANN case is opened. The tribe can file a motion to transfer at the time of a termination of parental rights request to the court, even if they have not intervened prior, or even if they had not tried to transfer. And there's some reasons a transfer wouldn't go through. And again, we'll talk about that. The reason that this can happen is petitions are filed. There's a petition to open a state abuse and neglect court. And then there's a separate petition for termination of parental rights. So that gives the tribe another opportunity to motion for transfer because they're two separate petitions under the same docket number. Okay, so some of the most important rights are active efforts, and we'll talk a little bit in a little bit about the difference between reasonable efforts and active efforts. I would like to hope that we do active efforts in all cases, but there are some specific things. We're required by policy, by federal law, to make reasonable efforts to reunify a family. ICWA says we must make active efforts. So I have a chart that kind of shows you the difference on those. It's a higher legal standard. A higher legal standard must be met before the removal of the child or termination of parental rights. So we have to justify everything we tried to do prior to taking custody of that child, such as trying to do a plan outside of contacting the judge, placing with a relative, something like that. Parents can seek to transfer to tribal court, but they can also veto a transfer. So if the tribe makes a motion to transfer jurisdiction, if one parent, doesn't have to be both, but if one objects, then that tribal transfer won't occur. Parents have input into the placement of their children. So we'll talk about placement preferences. ICWA has very specific placement preferences, obviously with the parents, if possible, a member of the extended family, a member of that child's tribe, a member of any recognized tribe, federally recognized tribe. And then there are good causes to place outside of ICWA preference. But parents can have input into that. So let's say mom and dad, we found a Native American home for you that meets ICWA preference, but they're located on the other side of the state. Sometimes parents will say, no, I want them closer to me so I can see them more often and I can work on reunification. So parents do have say into the placement of their children whenever possible. The rights of the parent extend generally to Indian custodians, also with a few exceptions. So let's say tribal court did give grandma custody. Okay, and we removed from grandma, she would have all of those same rights. Differences being we wouldn't terminate grandma's parental rights because she didn't have parental rights. She had a guardianship. So those things would not apply to the Indian custodian. That would be anybody who's had legal custody under tribal or even state law. We do guardianships as well, who's been given temporary custody. Sometimes if a parent's going to jail, they'll say, okay, I want my mom to care for my kids while I'm gone, sign a document. So those folks also have the same rights as the parents. All right, when does ICWA apply? In state court, they don't have to be in tribal court. ICWA applies if we have reason to believe at all, any reason at all to believe a child might be a Native American child member or eligible for enrollment in a federally recognized tribe. An Indian child is defined as under the age of 18, unmarried, and either a member of the tribe or eligible for membership, and one of the birth parents is already a member. So that's how the Indian Child Welfare Act defines an Indian child under that act for these protections. ICWA applies to emergency custody hearings, involuntary proceedings of any kind when we're moving children or placing children, a status offense proceeding. So if the child has some sort of juvenile court or voluntary proceedings.
Hey Kathy, can I
Yep.
ask you a question quick? It's something I never even thought about.
Sure.
It's unmarried. So what if you have like a 17-year-old that the child is actually married? Do you just, how does that work? I don't know. I've never thought about it.
Well, I guess at that point, we would almost have to look, they might be legally married, but who over the age of 18 is responsible? So are we doing an A and N on the spouse?
Yeah, okay.
So
Oh,
you-
yeah, okay.
Right? Because they
Mhm.
would have to have somebody over the age of 18. So an abuse and neglect case like that probably wouldn't occur because it wouldn't be a parent, guardian, or custodian. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry. All right. So when does ICWA apply? State courts cannot take into consideration whether the parent has ever had custody of the child, the extent to which the parents or children are connected to tribal, cultural, social, religious, or political activities, or the Indian child's blood quantum. Okay, so nobody's, social services, the judge, attorneys, nobody can say ICWA doesn't apply because the child only has so much Native American blood, or the parent never even had this child, gave him to grandma years ago. It doesn't matter. The courts can't make that determination. A tribe determines the child's membership or eligibility for membership. Okay, and there are 9 tribes in the state of South Dakota, federally recognized tribes, and there are numerous tribes throughout the United States. And almost every tribe has a different qualification for enrollment. Okay, it could be blood quantum, it could be lineage, if it was, from the great grandfather, if you could trace a line from the great grandfather. So we need to work very closely with the tribe to determine the child's eligibility if they're not already enrolled. A state court cannot substitute its own judgment for the tribe's determination and say, a judge can't say, I think this is ICWA or this isn't ICWA. Okay. A state court can make a decision if after several attempts throughout the case, the tribe has not responded to requests, but certainly not at the beginning of the case. We need to do everything we can to try to determine if that child is eligible for, if this is going to be an ICWA case. So for transfer, the parent, the Indian custodian, or the tribe may request at any time a case transfer. Okay, they send a motion to state court saying, we want to move this case to tribal court, and state, we want you out. They have the right to request the transfer is available at any stage in a foster care or termination of parental rights proceeding. So maybe our case is 6 or 7 months old. The tribe or the parents can state, I want this moved to tribal court. Again, the other parent can object and that transfer won't go through. But it doesn't have to be at the beginning of a case, not necessarily just at the end of a case. They have the right to make that motion at any time. The tribe must be notified in writing of the transfer petition. And that's kind of an odd statement for me to read, because every motion I've had in my 15 years or that I have seen has come directly from the tribe, so they're aware of it. The only time I've seen that happen is if the parents are of different tribal ancestries. Then if one tribe files the motion, we need to notify that other tribe as well. They may request a timely response regarding the declination of transfers. So if that transfer motion is denied, we have to let the tribe know immediately. Most frequently, in our little corner of the world anyway, most of the time in this area, we work with the Sisseton Wahpeton tribe. They file a motion, and if nobody's objecting, we have a hearing, or we do it through consensus and stipulation through email. They're leading the way in that because they filed the motion. So they do know right away as soon as the judge makes the decision on granting or denying the motion. It won't transfer if a parent has made the request and the tribe declines. It won't transfer again if either of the parents object to it. And it won't transfer if there's not good cause. I've only seen a good cause case once, and that was many years ago. We were literally in the middle of a termination of parental rights hearing. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and someone from the tribe called the mother's phone and stated, we want to transfer now. And that was not deemed timely because the tribe had had notice and the parents had notice. So, but once in 15 years, it really is the only time I've seen a good cause not to transfer.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned that the tribe could decline. Does that happen? And what circumstances would the tribe decline?
Okay, so there are times, and I can't speak for all tribes. Most of my experience again is here in North Dakota or in northeastern South Dakota with Sisseton Wahpeton. And sometimes the parents will request a tribal transfer, and we'll speak with the tribe. And they will say they might not have the resources. Maybe there are specific services or treatments that either the parents or a child needs, and they don't have the resources available. They may say, we agree at this time the parents are unsafe, but we have no family or foster homes where to place the children at this time. Or it could be, yes, mom's an enrolled member, but for whatever reason, the child's not eligible for enrollment in our tribe, then they could decline the transfer.
And when you say transfer, like, is that just to transfer the case from state court to tribal court, or what does that mean exactly?
Yes, the motion to transfer means, so when we take a child into custody, we're the legal guardians. And so we begin making all of the decisions for the children. We try to work with the parents. When the tribe makes a motion or someone makes a motion to have it transferred to tribal court, our judge is no longer making those decisions. That child is no longer in our legal custody. The tribe will then place with family members or, in a facility or back with the parents, whatever it is. Once a motion to transfer is granted, our case literally closes that day.
Okay, so then in that circumstance, would a CASA still be involved if it gets transferred to tribal?
I don't believe tribal court has. Wait, I take that back. I did hear that there is a CASA advocate in Sisseton Wahpeton tribal court, but at that point, our case is done. So I don't believe. Terry, have you ever followed?
Yeah, we have a contract with the Flandreau Santee tribe. So we can go in, they will let CASA into their courts.
And I like I said, I do believe I just very recently heard that there was a CASA advocate somehow connected with the Sisseton Wahpeton tribe. But that was the very first
I
I'd
have
ever heard
no
of that.
idea who that would be, Kathy.
No, I'd never heard the name, and I did not know that CASA had.
Not one of mine. Could it be like a Rapid kid got moved to Sisseton or something? They're letting, you know what I mean?
No, it sounded like it was the tribe's CASA advocate was the way it was described to me. Yeah.
Oh, they have their own program kind of thing. That's cool.
Yeah, and that was like a couple weeks ago because I was like,
Oh.
whoa, I didn't know that was a thing.
No, I like that though.
Yeah,
So can I ask one quick question too? So
Yep.
you said that there's an agreement with Flandreau. Since Brookings is close, that just kind of raises some questions for me. And you said that CASA is welcome in their courts. If there was a child from the Flandreau Santee Sioux tribe and the case got transferred, would we continue to work with you, Terry and Amy, or does that change? What does that look like in the transfer of
Yes.
cases?
Yes, we have a memorandum of understanding with that tribe, and so CASA would stay in the picture.
Right.
Continue, that's what we were saying, we're allowed to continue participating. That's not true with all tribes, but we have a specific MOU for the
Yeah, the
Flandreau.
only thing that would change is instead of working with like Christine's staff in Brookings as the Department of Social Services, you would work with the child protection workers in the tribe. They
Okay.
would be the ones running the case and you would talk to them and help them.
Okay.
And we would
Nice.
know, so I would work with you on that, make sure you had the right child protective worker contact information and everything. Good question, though.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does this happen a lot? Do cases get transferred to tribal court very often? It seems like it'd be a big burden for them to take on as a system as well.
I would have to
I'm
say
in,
it
oh, go ahead.
for our area, it varies. You know, sometimes if the tribe is very, very familiar with the family and has lots of relatives, it's much easier for the parents or the family members to request tribal transfer. We do find significant delays or at times a lack of response when they don't have family members or the resources needed. Oh, I'm so sorry. To manage the case, and then they will just say, we can't transfer it. But most of the time, if a family member requests it, they will make the motion. But sometimes, again, that other parent objects. And once they do, then that motion for transfer is off the table.
A quick question on back to the good cause. That's basically a reason that the judge could say, no, we're not allowing this transfer to happen to the tribal or to the tribe, correct?
Right, but it better be a really good cause, because then the judge is in violation of the Indian Child Welfare Act. So it's rare.
Right, but like if, I mean, let's just say there's a family, they've been in the system 5 times and the tribe is taken over every time. I mean, would it be reasonable to think that a judge may say, this is your 6th time in our courtroom, you're clearly not handling what's going on, we're not allowing that? Would that
Mm,
against ICWA?
yeah,
Big no, Sam, a big no.
Wow,
It's not a reason.
right,
okay.
right. You guys, I need 30 seconds to throw my dog out the door so he doesn't bark again.
All
Then
right,
I will
go
get
ahead.
to our reasonable versus active efforts.
No, the only time I've ever seen a judge not transfer a case was because it was the 9th hour, 10 minutes before the termination hearing. And like Kathy said, the mom got a call, said, oh, we'll intervene. And the judge's like, yeah, I don't think so.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, they intervene, and usually, like Kathy said, that day the kids probably get moved, go to family, and we're all done.
Yep,
There's
and that's
nothing
the only
more we
way.
can do.
That's how it was when we experienced it as well. It was like immediately, but I just didn't know if like
Yeah.
time after time after time, if
No.
a judge maybe like enough's enough.
I think judges have to be very careful so they don't get in trouble. ICWA is huge. And
Yes.
yeah, they're not going to play with that one. They're going to follow the rules very closely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so earlier I talked about how we as workers, my staff, we are required to make reasonable efforts to reunify a family. That's a federal standard. When they come and review our files every year, they're going to look and make sure we've made reasonable efforts to do everything we can to get children back home with their parents. The Indian Child Welfare Act requires that we make active efforts. And I really would like to think that we're making active efforts with all of our families, but the law does differentiate. The act gives specific examples. So a reasonable effort when we're working with a parent would be, here's a referral for mental health services. Okay, active effort says we're going to arrange those services, we're going to transport the parents, we're going to help the family engage in those services. Managing the case, ICWA says we need to proactively engage in diligent casework, which I hope we're doing anyway. Follow
Kathy,
up.
you guys do. I will give you a 10 thumbs up that I see you actively working cases all the time.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I do. I will commend you highly on that one.
Thank you very much. Like I said, this is what should be done with all of our cases. It's so clearly spelled out in the ICWA documentation. So meeting minimum policy standards. So we're required to see our children at least once a month alone and visit with them. We're required to meet with the parents once a month. We do more than that, but active effort says we have more contact than required, more visitation than required. We engage more with the extended family members. So going above and beyond our minimal standards is considered an active effort. Mainstream, if we're only referring them to our local counseling services and not looking into culturally appropriate services, maybe Dakota Pride, and other services that are more geared towards the Native American culture, then we're doing reasonable efforts, not active efforts. And updating the tribe and the tribal social worker, seeking service and case management suggestions, actively co-managing when the tribe has available personnel. And that's really an important piece to recognize, at least in the tribes here in South Dakota. Oftentimes they're severely understaffed. And so sometimes that can be a reason for a delay if a family's been, asking for them to transfer, or we've requested the names of relatives. It's because they are overwhelmed in trying to respond to every case that might include one of their tribal members. So, and now I guess we all feel that, with the lack of people and the lack of staff and the lack of resources, but that's a very common problem for them to have. So that can also play into some of the delays. So still going with reasonable efforts versus active efforts, 4E, which is a federal funding source. So the 4 tribes in South Dakota who have their own tribal CPS agencies, they fall under the same 4E funding, federal funding that we do. So ASFA, which is the Adoption Safe Families Act, says there are certain circumstances where we do not have to work to reunify a family. All right, there's actually an act out there that says we do not have to if certain things are met. So if there are aggravated circumstances, if they've had a prior termination, or if a parent committed certain other crimes, rape of a child, murder, those kinds of things, if that's in that parent's past, we do not have to work with that parent to reunify based on the ASFA Act. And there has to have been a judicial determination. The judge has to say, okay, you do not need to provide efforts to this family to reunify. ICWA has no exceptions. So ASFA, the federal act that gives us a right to go to a judge and say, hey, will you relieve us of efforts with this family? We cannot do that in an ICWA case. Okay, so ICWA trumps ASFA, even though they're both federal acts involving the child welfare system. So how to harmonize means don't go to the court and try to get a waiver so that we don't have to work with the family. And in 2005 here, you can see that ASFA does not override ICWA. So ICWA will always trump ASFA. ICWA trumps pretty much everything that we do. So the questions earlier about can a judge say no because there's been, so much repetition, the answer is no. So the ICWA placement preferences, We have to follow these unless we have good cause. So you'll often see in our court reports that it says that the court at this time finds good cause to place outside of ICWA placement, because either there are no family members or tribal members in the area, or there are no licensed Native American foster homes available. We have very, very few in the state. I know there's a big push, there always is, to try to find more licensed Native American foster homes so we can meet the ICWA placement preference. But again, it's like trying to find, I don't know, trying to find foster families of any race, creed, has become somewhat challenging. But if we have a Native American child in an ICWA case placed with a non-Native family, the judge needs to rule that there's good cause. So on our court reports, we have to write, these are all the things we've checked. We've checked with the tribe for relative names. We have done a statewide search through our licensing program to try to find Native American homes. So the judge has to rule that we've done everything we can. For adoptive placements under ICWA, a member of the child's extended family, other members of the Indian child's tribe, or other Indian families, again, of any federally recognized tribe. All right, good cause to deviate from the preferences. One or both parents have reviewed the placement options. Again, maybe we found a home, but it's on the other side of the state, Mom, and she says, no, I want them here, even if it means them being in a non-Native home, because they want to be closer to them or what have you. So if the parents object, the request of the child, if they're of sufficient age and capacity, the presence of a sibling attachment that can only be maintained through a specific placement. Right, so we do our best to try to keep siblings together. They've already been removed from mom and or dad. Often siblings they only have each other. Extraordinary physical, mental, or emotional needs. So maybe the child needs to be in a facility at this point to receive extra services. And the unavailability of a preferred placement after a diligent search. So this is often where we find ourselves, in that we have been unable to find a home at the time of placement that falls under ICWA placement preference. Okay. Oh, that's it.
Can I ask a quick question on that last one?
Absolutely.
Do you have some flexibility in the sort of immediate, something happens, kiddo needs to be removed from the home? Do you have some flexibility in the temporary placement because it's difficult to find a foster home that's a Native American foster home?
So
what does that look like? I'm just trying to think through a scenario that's this feels like a lot and you're going through a lot of hoops. Which makes sense, but how does that work in an emergent situation?
So it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning. We're calling foster homes. Our Office of Licensing and Accreditation does leave us on Fridays. They leave us an updated emergency placement list of folks we can call at night or on weekends. And there's a section that lists Native American foster homes. And initially we're going to do everything we can, hopefully, to try to find somebody locally. But I think there are only 4 or 5 in our area, and I'm talking, Hamlin County north, that I've seen. There are only 4 and they're usually full. So at 2 a.m. we're going to call a foster family as close to the area where the child resides as possible, because we want to try to keep them in their schools, want to try to keep them connected to their church, their communities, and certainly with their parents as we try to start those visits and get them together. So then Monday morning, when we actually get to speak to someone at the tribe, then we can begin to explore potential relatives if we didn't get those names at 2 a.m. Saturday morning. Other questions? I see Christine has joined us. She gets to do the next portion of your evening.
Yes.
And
I-
there is,
Oh,
hi, Christine. So there is Kathy's contact information also, if anybody needs that.
Please feel free to reach out, ask me any questions. You know, we deal with the Indian Child Welfare Act pretty frequently in our cases. And so if you're unsure what's going on or why a decision's been made or a recommendation's been made, it may be connected to that. Just reach out to your worker or your worker supervisor, or to Amy or Terry. Terry's been doing this a long time. She grasped those concepts and was able to say, you know, no, they couldn't do that, you know, as far as transfer and those kinds of things. So lots of resources. So I encourage you to reach out as you're on a case, or even if you're not, and you just have questions, just let us know.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you.
Can we
Thank
get
you.
Can we get a copy of this slide deck as well? I know we can,
Christine?
as we have questions or get ICWA cases, I know we can always reach out for help, but it would be nice to kind of refer back to as a refresher too, if we get an ICWA case.
Christine, I just took the one you wrote and took your name off and put mine on it. So
do you want me to, I can print it off, Amy, and give it
well,
to you.
she has it now
I-
because she had to share her screen.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
she emailed it to me. Thank you, but I have it. But you know, I didn't know, is it okay if we share that if someone wanted the information?
Yeah, I believe you can. There's no confidential information in the ICWA PowerPoint.
So. All right, everyone. Well, it's great to see so many potential advocates coming up. I love that this is actually your class time. This would have been really cool when I was back at Mount Marty.
Hey, Kathy, before you go, Cindy Lushke, please say hi because you will be a CASA under Kathy Miller's workers, and I would like her to meet you. Can you say hi?
Cindy, where are you? Oh, I don't see your
her.
face.
I don't know where
Can
she.
you hear me now?
Oh, there we
I can hear
go.
you.
No,
Okay.
you
I
have a
can't see you,
video
but I
over
can hear
here.
you.
Whoa, I don't look very good, but I guess
Well,
I guess
I
I
think
can
you're
do a video.
beautiful.
There,
There she is.
yes.
All right. Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
She is up in the Millbank area.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Good,
Works at
good.
Ortonville School.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so we will be able to use her in some interesting cases, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, Grant and Roberts County, they give me interesting cases all the time. So
All right, thank you, Cindy.
Okay, yep, you betcha.
Thanks, Kathy.
absolutely. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your presentation. Christine's awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
So we now have Christine Krogman, and she is the Child Protection Unit Supervisor in the Brookings and surrounding county area. I'll let Christine introduce herself and take it over.
Or did you want to give everybody a little break? I didn't know how long Kathy spoke.
About 55 minutes. I don't know. How long are you thinking you're gonna be
Mine
talking?
will probably a good hour and a half. And I will do
Okay.
my best to keep it in an hour, but I didn't know if anybody needed just a quick little break or grab a drink or anything. So I know
Well,
some-
if it's okay with you, maybe we should just take 5 minutes and people can do what they need to do and then we'll get rolling. Does that sound good?
Good.
Everybody will
right.
probably rush to take care of their pets really quickly.
Yes.
Take what you need. You guys are adults. I mean, just come back on when you're done. Go to the bathroom, do what you gotta do, come back.
Amy, did you want to make me a co-host? I think I can share.
I was going to share the screen, have you share the screen. I'm going to give you that power.
Yes.
Oops. And
Yeah, I still can't. Did you give me, are you host disabled participant screen sharing? So I'm still not.
I guess I can make you the host and then you'll be able to do whatever you need to do.
I promise to give it back to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, Christine, just make sure at the end before you don't log off because it'll have you take the recording onto your computer. So Amy
Oh,
needs to get back control. So don't log off till she gets control back. So the recording goes to our cloud.
okay.
Okay?
So
You
I
can't
can't,
log off till Amy tells you can log off.
so I have to make Amy host again, right?
Yes, and then that'll give her back the recording cloud. Otherwise, yeah, last time we did it, I think me and you both jumped off and then there was no recording,
Oh, no, we don't want to do that.
which is not a big deal. We have you do it live every time, but like I have one volunteer gone tonight, so I wanted to record it for her.
Sure.
You know, we always have you do every one of them. So we just use it for someone who's missing.
That is fine.
So we have a few different people on here tonight. I think we have 7 CASA volunteers. And then my human services class at the college has been taking parts of these as part of their coursework. Because on human services, guess what? It's how do we take care of people in our community? So I kind of intercombobulated them. So there is probably 6 or 7 students on here.
Okay.
And then we'd had foster parents ask about ICWA and stuff. And so then we invited Marla and Deb sent out emails to I think some foster parents who had asked. So we have a couple, like 3 or 4 foster families on here tonight too.
Oh, good. Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great.
So it's a big Zoom for what you're
Yeah,
used to when we
usually
do.
what yeah. No,
We
it's
even
great.
have
Cool.
foster family from like West River,
Hmm.
like Rapid or somewhere where, can't remember where she said. Amy, do you remember where she said she was from?
I
She
wonder
must
if
have been on a
we
break.
had to go to the restroom or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So, which is nice. That's one thing nice about Zoom. I mean, it's so easy to share information and let people learn no matter where they're at. So,
Mhm.
I know I had, what's her name from South Dakota Kids Belong? Went out of my head. I know her name. I can't think of it. right.
Christy Wosley.
Yeah,
Wilson?
yes.
Mhm.
She had reached out to me about she'd seen some trainings that CASA was like doing, but then sharing open with everybody, anybody could attend kind of thing. And so then, because I'm doing like that vicarious trauma is coming again. And then we're having, I can't think of her name now. Jody Farr is coming in, I think, February.
Okay,
And that's a very much a resiliency, taking care of community training. So that's open to the public one day. And so just, yeah, sharing more of that stuff since we could do it by Zoom. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
we're paying her, we might as well make it as big as we can get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like doing stuff in person, but Zoom definitely broadens the opportunities for people to come on.
Yeah, she'll actually be in Watertown that week, but we're gonna let some people Zoom in too, so. Yeah, I do like the live. Are you going to the CPCM this week?
No, I'm not. Teresa's gonna go though.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna go down, so Thursday, I don't know if I'm gonna go back Friday, usually by Friday I'm brain dead.
I did it last year, so I try to go every so often,
Yeah.
but. And the Aberdeen one was really good, I heard.
Crap, see, that one's always better and I always miss that one.
It is.
I never
yeah.
get a
And I
email
think
about
next
it.
year is gonna be super good, so
Will
I'm
you
gonna try to figure
email
out how to get my
me
team up there.
when you get that next year, if you remember? I never even get an email about it.
Oh, Maddie went to it and
I've
it was
been.
really good. And
Yeah, I've been to it.
the year before it was really good. And next year, I think they have a really good lineup again. So
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Oh, that one's better than anyone I've ever been to.
I've heard a lot of compliments.
They actually had the attorney there the year I went, that for Crosby, that was on the Crosby case, Bill Crosby case.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was a lady who worked for one of the victims
Okay, that would
out
have
of
been helpful to listen
Pennsylvania.
to.
It was a victim's attorney.
They
And that,
had the Christopher Watts, the Colorado dad, and that the speakers, I believe, were the ones that were doing the case
okay.
against the dad.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Sometimes I
Yeah.
think all the trainings are stuff we kind of already know. It's just a little twist on it, but theirs was just like, oh my God, okay, I've never heard this. This was really good.
The one I like about Sioux Falls, however, I think they try to keep it very local to the state. So a lot of your keynotes that's what I've been seeing the theme the last couple years, your keynotes, your big speakers. It's an event that occurred within the state.
Yeah.
And then Aberdeen, they bring out these national
Mhm.
cases and stuff, which is a nice, so both of them bring a nice quality. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started, Christine, and people may pop in, but
Okay.
your time is valuable, so we appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate being here, and I know you guys this is wonderful that you're taking some time to do some training with CASA. This is great. We appreciate the Brookings office, absolutely appreciates the advocates and our foster families. I see some like Samantha Himley, Tara Mills with the foster closet. We just, it's what really, and I hope this PowerPoint will reflect that it's really a team effort when we are working with our families and children of our community, that it's really just not one agency. And our agency, DSS, we need that support from our foster parents, our CASA advocates, our nonprofits, just for families to be successful. So very informal training. Please be free to interrupt me or put on chat. I'll have to ask Amy to maybe monitor the chat and Terry in case I can't see it. And again, just interrupt me if we want to have a little bit of discussion with this particular PowerPoint. So this PowerPoint is called Walk With Me. It was really designed for just to kind of give an idea of what family service specialists, what child welfare workers have to do on a day-to-day basis when they work. What are those decisions that we make and why we do the things that we do. So that's kind of why this was created. This is me. This is my family. I love puppies. So if you like puppies, I would like you too. I'm actually a native from Brookings. I grew up in Brookings. This is my hometown. I graduated from South Dakota State University. I've been working for child protection over 16 years. And within the 16 years, I'm also a trainer for case management, which is kind of my love. For new workers, case management. I also am a trainer and also advocated and facilitated motivational interviewing within the state. So I do kind of a little bit of some side things within our department or in the Division of Child Protection. So just a little bit about CPS and Family Service Specialist. A lot of times we get questions about what our training is. What do we get? In the Department of Social Services, our division is the only division in child protection to have such an extensive training compared to maybe economic assistance, child support, child care assistance. We're the only division within the department that has an extensive training. And so our family service specialists, their first year with CPS, it's pretty much involves a lot of training. So if you're working with a family service specialist and you find that, hey, you're new to the job, you're under 6 months, just to know that they're going to a lot of training as they are doing their case management. So around 236 hours of training. I have one that's kind of almost completing her certification, but it's literally, she's in a week-long training at least once a month, or once a month, week-long training with a 2-day training here or there. Another question we get a lot is how big is our caseload? And it depends on the office. So like, for example, Kathy's office in Watertown, they do have a few more workers, and they also, their caseload does reflect that. They have a few more families than Brookings does. My office, I have 3 ongoing case managers. I have 1.5 initial family assessment workers, and then I have an aide. And then I'm sometimes very lucky, I'll have an intern or 2 interns. Typically, caseworkers can have a caseload up to 15 to 25. I can only speak for Brookings. I can't really with Kathy, but I think they have maybe 1 or 2 more than us. But the case load for my case managers usually average around 10 to 15. And then for each of those case loads, as far as children go, it's around probably that 15 to 20 children per caseload. So when you're working with someone, with the family service specialist, especially with the 1 child, just to know that they may have 15 other children that they're also overseeing. So just talking about, like with CASA and even our foster families, how important that we need your input and how things are going with the child and their needs and getting the children's needs met. When I do training, it's like, this family service specialist is a single parent to like 20 children. So it can be quite a challenge to oversee. We also have to know that family service specialists follow state and federal laws, as well as state and federal guidelines, practice, and policies. And that's really important for us to remember that, just because families are complex. We all come to the table with different experiences, tradition, culture, even expectations as how a family should operate. And so that's why it's important that there are laws and federal laws and expectations to protect parents' rights and also to protect a child's right to be part of their family and even relatives. And we'll talk a little bit more on that. So basically, a family service specialist might have an opinion, but what we share and what we recommend is based on state and federal laws, not personal, not feelings. It has to be based on those state and federal laws. This is my group. We kind of change once in a while. We always have interns coming and going. So we had a lot of pictures this summer. Again, my team is fairly smaller than the Watertown team. In South Dakota, we are statewide. So our practices and policies is similar to when you go to Rapid City. If engaging with a child welfare worker or a CPS there, it's going to be the same as we do in Brookings. So for example, Minnesota, a lot of their child protection services are county based. So they may have different policies per county, whereas South Dakota, we don't. I'm part of the green part, Region 5. My sister offices are Watertown, Huron, and Aberdeen. So as supervisors, we get together at least once a month and we discuss our cases and practice and policies and ensure that our quality of work is good. Here's our vision and mission. Another thing is with DSS, and it just fits CPS very perfectly, that our goal is to strengthen families. Our goal is to strengthen families and provide support to those families so that reunification can occur. What we see on TV are those horrible, horrible cases. So keep in mind that yes, we do experience those horrible cases. And there are times where children will not have access to those family members, those parents. However, the majority of the cases that we do, children are having access to their families, to moms and dads, to their relatives, and that as DSS, we're working on strengthening and supporting those families so they can be together safely. Through this PowerPoint, I'm going to go through our model a little bit, just kind of understand some of those decision points in this case, and also provide the participants an understanding of the child welfare system, and to provide participants an understanding how they can assist, which is really important in the child welfare system. So when I say child welfare system, it doesn't mean DSS. Child welfare system includes the community, the counseling, the schools, our foster families, CASA, all of that. That's the child welfare system. So in the state of South Dakota, we have what's called a comprehensive safety intervention model. This is our model. This is our practice. We have decision points at each point of the case. The beginning point would be intake. So if we have a community member or a mandated reporter concerned about the welfare and safety of a child, that is the first decision point that comes to us. We get that report from that community member or that mandated reporter, and we have to make a decision. Is this rise to a level of an abuse and neglect where it needs to be assigned and for family service specialist to go out and assess? From that, if it is assigned, we do what's called an initial family assessment. That's a report where I'll kind of break down some of those decision-making points, but it's quite a bit. So that is kind of our second piece. So it got assigned to the office. We have a family service specialist that goes out and assess the family. We also have a safety plan determination, conditions for return, which I'll talk later on toward the end. But that is a wonderful practice that we have in child protection to help families that have been separated or children being displaced. How can we have the children be reunited with their family? Even though there may be some concerns that are still that we need to work on, but how can we have a safety plan in place so children can be with their families where they're not being separated for a long time? So it's called the safety plan of determination, and also conditions for return. We also do a case plan called a protected capacity assessment. And if you had an opportunity, especially advocates, if you have an opportunity to read those protected capacity assessments, please don't hesitate to visit with your family service specialist to say, can you go through this? But the outcomes are based on behaviors. What protective parental behaviors do we need to see that are enhanced? We're not a compliance-based state or practice. So what that means, our practice isn't required where a parent has to go to a parenting class and that's checked off, or they have to do a mental health assessment, that's checked off. That's not our practice. Our practice is you need to go to the parenting class, but what are we seeing and learning that you got out of the parenting class? Same with the mental health or their counseling, is if they go to that, what are they learning and getting out of that? Is it showing an improvement in their parental skills toward their children? And then we do an evaluation with the families. Any questions so far?
I have a real quick question.
Yeah.
Back when at the very front, it was the intake, and then so when it goes from the intake assessment to the initial family assessment, who makes that decision? Is that does it come to you and you have to make that decision, or is there someone higher up above the Brookings office that makes that decision?
That's a really good question. So a couple years ago, our state went to what's called a centralized intake. So if you are concerned about a child's welfare or safety, you go and you call that intake number, and it goes to the intake team. So the intake worker will take that information, they'll make their determination if it rises to the level of assignment. And then it goes to a screener, and then they'll they'll either agree with the intake worker or disagree. If they disagree, they'll bring in the supervisor. So it's a really complicated but very serious decision when it is assigned. So it doesn't go to the local office. It used to a long time ago. I love this practice so way better. So the intake in Sioux Falls and Rapid City, they make the decisions if the assignment needs to be assigned or not. So
Awesome.
that's a good question. It's not in the local office. And what I see for not being in the local office across the state as well, there's a lot more consistency of assignment and the reason of assigning. And so when you talk to an intake worker, they are trained in understanding what needs to be assigned and what doesn't need to be assigned.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just to follow up that, as a mandated reporter, if we were to call on something that happened with a child, we're not talking to you guys locally anymore. We're talking to a centralized location.
Yep, you are
Okay.
talking to, yep. And that has been going on for the last 2.5, I think we're going into our 3rd year with our region. I believe that all the offices in South Dakota now go central. We used to have a kind of like a little bit of a transition, but all the offices in South Dakota, if you're calling, it's that 1-800 number. You're either talking to somebody from Sioux Falls or Rapid City. Yep. Good questions. So the initial family assessment is assigned with the IFA worker. They have to determine a couple decision points within that assessment. They have to look at the allegations and determine, does it exist? Is there valid to the allegations? Is there truly neglect? Is there truly physical abuse? Is there truly sexual abuse? So they're determining those allegations. We're also with the assessment, we're not incidental, or incident based. We do a whole assessment. So we're assessing not only for physical abuse. So if we get assigned because of physical abuse, we are still assessing for physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, and also sexual abuse. So for example, a couple years ago when I went out with a caseworker, we had a little guy that the allegations was physical abuse. And as we were doing the interview, we were going through all the questions of abuse, and then he disclosed sexual abuse from a neighbor. And so that's our assessment. We do a whole holistic assessment. We also determine if any further safety interventions are required. What that means is when we come on scene or we work with the family, the first thing is that we have to determine, do we have present danger? And that means it's immediate, we can see it, it's a concern, it's behaviors that are threatening the child, they're in danger, it's significant, and we can clearly see that it's occurring. So when we go on scene, our family service specialist, typically they're with law enforcement, sometimes they're by themselves, but that first initial contact, we're assessing, do we have present danger? So in the long version of this training, we have a long story. So I'm just going to summarize a little bit of a story with Walk With Me. So just kind of imagine you're the family service specialist, but our family service specialist is named Brittany. She's within like her 2 years with CPS, and she's on call. She gets called late at night around 8 a.m. by law enforcement, and they're telling her, hey, CPS worker, you need to come on scene. We have a mom, and she's a mother to 4 young children, all under the age of 8. And she was in an altercation with her boyfriend, Joe. They're also saying that Joe and Emily were intoxicated and that the 8-year-old, Susie, she must have stepped in between her mother and Joe because she got hit in the face, and she has been observed with a significant bruise on her right side of her cheek. So our on-call worker gets that information. Listening to that information, that's something she's going to go out on. With our safety model, we'll kind of explain that present danger, but it really hits some of the definitions of present danger. Our on-call worker, Brittany, arrived at the home. She visited with the young gal, Susie, who disclosed that her mother had been drinking alcohol often and not caring for her younger siblings. Brittany approached Emily and Brittany, and she could smell, she could smell it. Mom is definitely had been drinking that evening. Emily's also showing behaviors of slurring her speech, but she appeared to understand what's going on. There's a little comprehension. She knows what's going on, even though she's intoxicated. Emily begged Brittany not to put her children in foster care and that she can take care of them. The long version, Emily, mom, this is not her first time. Her children have been in care before. So she kind of is telling Brittany, please, please, please don't put my children in foster care. Law enforcement, they like to give their opinion right away. I've, working 16 years, I always hear it all the time. But law enforcement, they're like, you know what? I'm sick of it. We're always out here. The children need to go into foster care, like right now. They want a court order for the children to go into care. Again, explaining they've received multiple reports from neighbors complaining of yelling and also possible drug use from the residents. Emily on the side is saying, it's not Joe's fault. No, this isn't Joe's fault, it's me. And then law enforcement decided to arrest Joe and Emily. So what would you guys do with this family as a family service specialist with Brittany? What are some things that are coming to your head?
With the fact that they were both arrested, wouldn't Brittany have to take the kids and put them in foster care?
So we have two parents that no longer can be in that caregiving role. So I'm guessing this is Samantha Himley, because I can understand, right?
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
it is. But then I just got to thinking they could probably try to find family before putting in foster care, I guess.
But I like your frame of thought. You're like, we got two parents that are going to be removed, so we have to make a plan, right? So whatever, that we need to have a plan for the kids because they're too young. They're not like 17, right? Or
Right.
anything like that, even though that can be. What are some other thoughts? What would you guys do? What are your concerns?
I would be concerned about the child that got physically hit and physically if she's all right.
Yeah.
Or the other ones, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a family service specialist, you're going on scene. Not only are the parents getting arrested, but we got to think about the safety of the children and their medical condition.
Right.
So absolutely, Rebecca, there's times where we go on scene and we see significant bruises on children. And the first thing that might be popping in the head, or when a family service specialist is calling, it's really important for family service specialists. Our practice is they do call their supervisor, which is a good practice. I've heard other stakeholders, they always question that, but think about what's going on. We're in a crisis. We got fight. We got two intoxicated people. We have young children that are probably scared, don't know what's going on. We have a child that's severely injured or maybe really injured. So there's a lot of things going on, and it's nice to have another sounding board so that someone's like you said, Rebecca, oh my God, I'd be concerned about those other kids. Did you check them? Do they have bruises? We know that one has one, right?
So
So
Christine, one of the questions was, so where are the siblings? So all the kids are still in the home, is that right?
yep, all the kids are in the home, but it was Susie that had an injury to her face and she had stepped in just to stop the fighting. So that is what's going on. That's, just a week ago, I had staff that went to the hospital. We had a little child that the call was she had ate an edible. So just please know that, it's coming to Brookings, if not already, because of the laws and stuff. And her parent got very upset that she ate the edible, and actually hurt her quite significantly. And so this is what my family service specialists are to get involved right away. We have a lot of things that are going through our head, how to protect this little child, what is the next steps for the family to make sure everybody is safe. And when we're at the hospital, we're trying to remember all the questions that we need to ask. Because we have drugs in a little girl's system. Is she going to be okay? What is that going to look like? And then her injuries. So it was kind of a double whammy that evening.
And just out of curiosity, so whoever was on call, and had to go to the hospital, do you generally also go on big cases like that? Or do they go and try to manage it themselves?
It just really depends. Sometimes I go with them and sometimes they don't. It really depends on the family service specialist. So for me, I do tend to go out with them if they're under the years of 2. And then it just depends if they're comfortable with it. With the one with the edible, there actually 2 workers went out on that one. And so they teamed it as a peer team, and then I stayed back so I could be on the computer looking for family.
Awesome.
But there's times where, on a Saturday, I went on 2 with a new worker. That was fun. Went to Howard and Madison. So I do go out because it is kind of it can be kind of really, I don't know how to say that. It can be a challenge. And sometimes it's nice to have someone just presently there to kind of bounce ideas.
Right.
Versus just calling me. So and my team tends to double up on call sometimes. And I think that's really have been supportive. So I do support that because I think that's really supportive. And in Brookings, we are very, very fortunate with our law enforcement as well. I can't say enough about that. They really are very good with coming with us to those homes, or if we don't know the family well, they're willing to at least give us a little bit of patience and come with us because we don't know who these people are when we go out there. So, yes, Rebecca?
I have a question. So if a person is a CASA volunteer and you're visiting a family and you notice bruises on a child, would we call your office, or we would call, what would we do, I guess?
So Rebecca, I think it just depends on the situation that you're on. If you see a bruise and it's concerning or unexplainable, sometimes you may have to call law enforcement right then and there.
Okay.
Or if you're just like, what you need to process a little bit, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? You can definitely call the family service specialist or myself or Amy or Terry, wherever you're connected to, and they'll probably say, okay, let's call law enforcement depending on the situation, or call the family service specialist if mom and dad are giving some sort of justification for the bruising.
I think if you feel that there could be potential danger going on, if you walked into maybe a situation that had been volatile, to kind of do your thing, get in and out quick, to not put yourself in danger. And then I would call law enforcement, and I would back up call the worker, and I would back up call Amy and me. I would do it in that order: police, worker, because you guys can go in and do something. We can't. We can support you, but you guys are the ones can do something about it. So we need to get those people, especially law enforcement. I think if there's danger, if there's bruising and a kid's playing and everyone feels calm and normal, let the DSS worker know and let me and Amy know, so we know to help back you up on that stuff. But get out of the house. I don't want, and Amy doesn't either, we don't want you guys putting yourself in an unsafe position, no more than Christine does. But you guys can, like, you call police if you know a family is,
well,
you're
I
unsure.
can give an example,
Yeah.
so 2 examples. We had a child that came to school with some significant bruising, and she said she fell down the stairs, but she wasn't scared of mom. She wasn't, but the teacher did the right thing. She called because it was just like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And so we just got involved. Another situation, I will never forget this when I was a caseworker. All I had to do was just a check-in to visit with mom, and she'd been doing so good, like so super good, but she struggled with drinking alcohol here and there. So I knocked on the door, and she opens the door. A guy flies out of the trailer, and mom had her ponytail like the 80s, on the side, which was not her normal hairdo. And she was intoxicated, and she was holding the baby. Now, again, I was DSS. So literally I'm like, oh, okay, this is very different. She's been doing so good, but she's clearly intoxicated. I don't know who this guy ran out. I could see the kids in the trailer. So I stepped out. I didn't leave the scene, but I did call my supervisor, and then I had law enforcement come to assist so we could remove the children safely from the home. So I think it just depends, Rebecca, when you go there, because you know, kids get bump and bruises. But there's times you're like, if you don't feel safe, you're probably not safe.
Well,
Yeah.
and Christine, can you speak? I know there's normal bruises for children and
Yeah.
there's bruises that the doctor like, yeah, something weird happened there. You want to talk a little bit about that? Just briefly.
You know, it just depends. I mean, on your body too. Like there's parts of your body that's protected that typically will not get bruising, you know, unless like your ear hardly gets bruising on your ear. Or for example, the girl that had significant bruising to her that ate the edible, that got so upset, on one of her cheeks, you could see like the fingerprints where he slapped her. And then the other side of her ear was swollen and very red. So my guess is he hit her so hard that she either hit her head. Sorry if you can't hear me because I'm like motioning. And, you know, I'm not an expert, but that's kind of how you learn, you know, where, ooh, you know, when you see what appears to be fingers is probably not accidental. And, you know, like little kids, like 2-year-olds, you might get bumps and bruising here just because I remember he's 26. So, but I mean, when he was little, he was so hyper. He liked to jump off the couch. I mean, I'm such a calm person. I was not used to a very active child, but he would have, I'm just like, oh my God, Tyler, you just again bumped your head because he grew so fast. He's so tall. He's such a tall kid. But he had a really tall, and he just liked going under the table, and then he hit his head. It's like, you know, if anybody is a parent, you all know, right? When you have the spirited children that I love. So, you know, you'll have those normal bumps and bruises, and then you'll have ones that are very suspicious. Or when they say they fall down, usually it's going to be on one side of your plane. You're not going to have like a bruise here or a bruise here or a bruise there kind of thing. But yeah. But I would say if you don't feel safe, I think most of you have good instincts that if you don't feel safe, it's probably not a safe situation. And make sure to call law enforcement, the family service specialist, me, or Amy and Terry right away. Good. Okay, so we're going back to this slide. What would you do? So here's that safety model that I was talking about in present danger. And so we have a child that, if we look at it, we have a child that has a bruise on her face, right? So we have what's called this present danger threat assessment. We have quite a few different definitions, but this helps our family service specialist as well as me. We can definitely break it down to say, this is danger. We can go to court and say, Your Honor, that Susie has an injury to her face due to splitting up mom and dad or boyfriend, and Joe hit her. We can say that. Samantha had brought up, we got 2 parents that are not going to be able to take care of the kids because they're getting arrested. Okay, well, now we have caregivers that are unable to perform essential caregiving responsibilities. There's no adult in the home that's going to be able to care for them. We could also say that both adults are impaired. So when we have this assessment, we can go back to our model and we can pick these out. And this super helps when we go in front of the judge to say, hey, this is what's happening. We also can say maybe family violence. Does that make sense?
Are there a certain number of these present dangers, or just one is all you need?
Nope. We click all the present dangers that is applicable to the case.
Right, but I just mean, do you need to have like 2, 3, or 4 for it to be an issue, or as long as there's just one, if that's all it takes?
You just need one.
Perfect.
So, yep, you just need one. And then that will prompt that we need to make a plan for the children. So
Hey, I gotta.
Yeah.
What are the procedures once the kid gets taken? I guess.
yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that too in the next couple slides. But when we have that, I just want to go through where I kind of just talked a little bit. I'll go through this one really quickly. So if a family service specialist identifies at least one, but we identify everything that's applicable to the case, then we have present danger. But we have to define it. We have to explain it very well. We have to justify it with facts. All right. So what that means now is that family service specialist Brittany, our fictional family, we have made a decision that we do have present danger. We need to make a plan. We need to make a plan for the family. And it doesn't necessarily mean that children have to enter foster care immediately. We can work with the family voluntarily to decide, hey, where can your children be that's safe? And so there's a lot of different types of present danger plans. It doesn't necessarily mean a child needs to be displaced from mom or dad or both. So these are some of the examples that can occur, and we could have the threatening person leave the home, and we have done that. We've had threatening person leave the home. Maybe that's the primary person that assault, and then we have someone else that may check in with mom and the children just to make sure things are going okay. So that responsible adult in the home coming in once in a while. Responsible adult routinely monitors the home. We could have grandma come into the home. So maybe we have a mom and dad where they're struggling with basic cares for their newborn baby, and grandma has agreed to move in for the time being to help with those basic cares for baby. So that way mom and dad can be with their newborn baby. So we have people that will decide to do that. Child is cared for outside of the home once in a while, periodically, or a child lives with someone in the network part-time, or a child lives with someone in the network 24/7. So it can be that. So that's a voluntary plan. That doesn't mean that the child needs to go into custody, but we also have the most intrusive present danger plans where if the parent isn't agreeable to placing their child, or if they have no one to place their child with, then the department is obligated to call the judge to explain the situation, because we need to have a safe place for the children. We may have kinship care, relative care. So sometimes mom and dads, we may have an appropriate grandma, we may have an appropriate grandpa, but for whatever reason, they're declining. And if we can't find or justify why we couldn't place the children, it's still not a voluntary placement because mom and dad are disagreeing. So we could call the judge and say, hey, we do have a grandma and grandpa. They're willing to take care of the parent, take care of the kids. It's just mom and dad are not agreeing, but we have no justification to say they really can't. So children can be in kinship care. We have foster care as well, and then we have group or residential treatment. Children that go into foster care, children that go into group care, residential treatment, DSS would more than likely, obviously, would have custody unless the foster parents are willing to work voluntarily with the family. Sometimes we have families, this is, for example, this is this mom's second time. So let's say that mom's had a really good relationship with a foster family, and this foster family is saying, yes, we can care for the child without custody. However, then they, as far as payments and stuff cannot occur. So foster care with child protection, our goal is to place children with family as much as possible. That's kind of our priority. We're always looking for family as quickly as possible. And the reason is children tend to do better with their families. We do have a higher percentage rate of children disrupting in their foster care homes. And I think it's children, it's foster families, and with children not knowing each other well, it's not knowing who they are. That's why with kinship, with grandma and grandpa, they know this child, they know how to deal with the child. But we do see a higher percentage of disruptions in foster care. versus kinship care. Does it happen in kinship care? Yes, it does. We do have children that disrupt out of kinship care. Also foster care, unfortunately in our area, we're in a foster care crisis, especially our rural areas. Brookings here in the Brookings area, we're pretty good, but if you're going outside of Brookings, especially if a child is going to Flanders School, we really don't have foster homes in the Flanders area. So if a child is displaced or placed in custody for Moody County, the likelihood of that child not being in the same community is pretty high. So that's a thing that we always think about versus families. Sometimes a lot of times families live in that same community and such that they can continue to be there. The other thing is two siblings may be split. We do have some wonderful, wonderful foster families. We have one on your team right now, but we do struggle placing children that are siblings of 3 or more. We do tend to see children being split. If there's 3 siblings, the chances of them being split is actually fairly high. Versus a relative that might consider taking all of them. Again, yeah, that's kind of the realities of our work. So walk with me, we're going back to our fictional family service specialist, Emily, or Brittany, and Emily mom was unable to identify a relative to care for all of her children. She disclosed she doesn't know where her oldest child, Susie's father is, and hasn't had contact with Susie's father forever. The younger children's father, Brent, is currently on parole, and law enforcement advised Brent they have had recent contact with him. So there's some things in Brent's path that might not be, he may not be appropriate placement at this point. Emily provided the younger children's paternal grandmother as an option for placement. However, she was concerned that Grandma Ruth wouldn't care for Susie. So Ruth is Brent's mother and lives about an hour away from Emily's home community. So family service specialist Brittany did call Grandma Ruth to see, hey, can you take all the children? And she basically said, yeah, I can take all the children, but not Susie. Ruth also shared her voice and her anger at the system for not doing anything sooner, and the children should have been removed such a long time ago because this is ridiculous. They should be in foster care like right now. So we have an option with Ruth. She's going to take the younger children. And so family service specialist, her supervisor, and the licensing worker were starting to call potential foster homes for placements. This is pretty typical. We calling about 5 homes. I would say in the past year, kind of side note, we've been calling many homes. And unfortunately, with our foster parent crisis, it's really hard to place children in homes. So for us, calling 5, 6, 7 homes is pretty common for us. With this particular story, they got connected with the Anderson family, and they said they would care for all of the children. So Miss Anderson says she could keep them all together. So I want you to kind of think you got Grandma Ruth, who said she'll take the younger children, but absolutely not the oldest 8-year-old because she's naughty. But then you have a foster family that would take all of the children in the foster home.
Wouldn't it be less trauma for the children to have them together?
Possibly.
Yeah, I'm just thoughts on this. Yep. I don't know.
I would agree keeping them together because at this point you're still going to work reunification with mom.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping them together is going to be better for them.
Yep.
Plus you're not, you're keeping them in the same community. I mean, it's not like grandma's in town. She's a long ways away. So
yeah, it's not an easy decision. Is anybody grandparents? Would you like that decision? If
as a foster
mm-hmm.
as a foster mom and a grandparent to young grandkids, no, I probably wouldn't, but I also have a little bit different view in life because I have children in my life that are part of my children's lifestyles that aren't biologically grandchildren, but we treat them the same. So I would say, yes, I'll take all of them.
Right.
So it's a little bit different view for me. I have a hard time understanding why grandma would go, nope, I won't take that one, because it's a sibling. And to me, they all, I know that they should all stay together. And so I would be willing to take them all. So I'm sure she wouldn't be happy with that decision, but I also don't understand why she wouldn't take them all.
Samantha, you are wonderful because you always take all siblings. But
Crazy, but no, we love it.
Well, and it's important to remember that she's not a grandma to that one.
Yeah.
Right.
She's not a biological grandma to the oldest one, so maybe she doesn't even love that one.
Right.
I mean, that happens.
It does.
It would seem if you would take the one child, if they would take the younger kids and not the older one, the feeling of being responsible or ostracized would be tremendous for that oldest child.
I know. So that's what's messy. This is absolutely very difficult. And I wish I could say that what Samantha is saying is what we see in every case. So CASA workers, be prepared. So with grandma, she has a right to say who she would like for her siblings and her blood related. And we do have families that will only choose. We have a case right now where a relative took all 4 children, and one by one, they were separated, and they're separated today. And you know the one I'm talking about, Amy, just breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. It's not easy, and I'm not going to say what's the right decision, but I do agree if we could keep the siblings together, that would be in the best interest for the majority of the children that we work with. But there is circumstances where children will be split, and sometimes it's a hard decision. But we have laws in place that protect relatives, and that's from the 2008 Fostering Connections that gave an opportunity for families to be notified if their relative is in care. They need to be notified that their relative is in care, and they have a right to at least express if they want to be a placement. If it's like this situation with Ruth, we want to be open and kind of hope to convince her to take all 4, but we definitely can't force her to take all 4.
Well, and as a former foster parent too,
Mhm.
I think sometimes if a parent, a grandma or somebody does not want a child for whatever reason, it's actually damaging to put them in a home where they'll eventually feel that they're not wanted.
Right.
Because even if we think we can pretend that we love kids, kids still feel our emotions, or you know what I mean? I knew when I was done being a foster parent, it was time to be done, because I was having a hard time wholeheartedly loving children. And so it could have been damaging if I would have made myself do it just because it was the right thing to do. So sometimes, I know it always sucks, but sometimes they're better off than being with someone who doesn't want them.
So in this case, though, would the laws really lean towards giving grandma those the 3 and then finding a home for the oldest? Or do you think, would a judge be more likely to say, well, it's really in the best interest of all the kids to stay together, so the preference is going to be that if we have a home available, that they go to the one home?
Yes and no, it just kind of depends. Laws are fairly gray. Our judges are going to lean more toward family because it's going to be more of a relative preference. The only thing with when we talk to the relatives, if we locate another relative that's willing to take all 4, that's probably, we have a little bit more leeway to remove the children from grandma, saying, but we have an aunt now that's willing to take the younger children plus the older one. And so in the scheme of things, in the best interest, they're in a relative home and the siblings are together.
Yep.
So it's messy, but yes. And so in this particular scenario, the children are split. The children, we have 3 of the children, 3 of the children are going to be with grandma, And then Susie is going to be in foster care. When we're calling the judge, just because Mom Emily brought up the name Grandma, we're still asking the judge for full custody of all 4 children. All 4 children. We're not just asking custody for Susie. We're all 4 children. And so they're split, but they're under the legal custody of the state.
Okay.
Yeah, these are hard decisions. They're not easy decisions at all. So we do have laws in keeping brothers and sisters together. And so we have when you see SDCL, that's a South Dakota law. And then we have foster connections I just talked about, that's from 2008, making sure that we're keeping the siblings together. And one thing to note too, that if siblings are separated, such as this scenario, the importance that puts onto the department that we have to have frequent visitations with the siblings. So that's actually separate from mom and dad. So we have family time with mom and dad and the children, and then the children themselves will also have their separate family time together without mom and dad. We've been very fortunate with a lot of our foster families working together to make sure those connections still continue if the children are separated. So
I have a really nice story up here. And for you CASA workers, so we had 5 children come into care. I think 3 of them are under 6 and the other 2 are like 8 and 11, but there's a lot of behaviors. And the 2 foster families are like, there's no way, one already had 4 kids, and one had 2. They're like, there's no way we can keep all of them, but we'll take half. And then the CASA volunteer actually gets the kids and does an activity with them. Like, she does it weekly. That's not mandatory, but she does it above and beyond what DSS is doing and helping out so that they are seeing each other. She goes to the zoo or to the pool and makes sure these kids talk to each other. She's doing like Zoom or the FaceTime visits with them. She'll go to one house and get the other ones on the phone. I mean, an amazing job. I mean, this is like, I cannot give this CASA enough kudos for how hard she's working to make sure these kids are talking and seeing each other as often as possible. And the kids are doing great. And it's actually, we're watching them grow because there were so many behaviors that were negative with them all being in the home and, you know, what they've learned, that they're actually learning to respect and love each other in a whole new way. So in the long run, it was actually better for them. You know, it is. They're doing great.
Good. So here's a slide, which I think sometimes we try to understand why sometimes siblings are split, and sometimes it's important that just for their own safety, they may have to be split, and for maybe legal reasons as well. Children may have different fathers. The fathers have a right to raise their biological child, and they also have a right to say, I'm not comfortable raising their half sibling. So those are times when brothers and sisters might be split because we have different fathers. We've had cases where some fathers were willing to do guardianship with the half sibling, and that's pretty cool to see. But that's maybe one of the reasons why they're split. Again, like our scenario with grandma taking the 3 children versus the oldest one, that could be another reason. We also have children that their behaviors, their interactions could be a threat to each other. And so sexual abuse or aggressive behaviors is just not safe for the siblings to be together in the same place. So that may be why they're split as well. Brothers and sisters relationship help children achieve developmental milestones. So these are the positives. Why we want to keep siblings. If you think about your own, if you have siblings, this is going to be more than likely maybe the person that's going to be with you. I mean, for example, my brother, we have the same experiences, we have the same parents, but hopefully, I mean, we're going to be together versus maybe some of our friends or people that come and go in our lives. We are always going to be consistent to that. When children are separated from their brother or sister, often they feel they have lost a part of themselves, which increases the anxiety and pain and trauma. And so there's been a lot of studies where it's so important to keep their siblings together as much as possible. So we're going back to our story. So family service specialist Brittany now talks to the dad, Brent. Brent is the father to the younger children. He explained he's currently on parole with Mitch. And if you think parole and probation, parole is he got out of prison and has been doing so well. He only violated his parole about 2 months ago due to marijuana with some friends. Since then, he's been very clean, has a 1-bedroom apartment, has been working at the same job for about 3 months. The last time he had seen his children was when the youngest was born. So at that time, Mom Emily just cut him out of his life. So, but his mom is Ruth, so they're like, okay, whatever. But he says, well, he was kind of moving around and really didn't see them much. He wants to parent them, but he isn't sure if he can be a single dad to 3 young children. So as a family service specialist, what should Brent's role be toward his children? Do you think, does he have no rights as he hasn't been involved with the children at all? So he has really no rights toward this case. He should only have just visitation with the children and that's it. He should be a placement resource for his children. He should be a placement resource for all the children, including the oldest. What do you guys think? What do you do with those dads?
I mean, just looking at things, I don't think he feels that he's ready to take on being a placement for the kids, but that he could work up towards that. I know that really wasn't an option in there. So I don't feel like I feel like you should start with visitation, get to know the kids, work on how to take care of the kids, things like that. But I don't think it should just be visitation. I feel like it should be with the possible, the kids coming into his care.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that it would start with visitation and trial, and see it kind of sounded like he would be willing to start the process. He was just unsure of himself and his abilities. And so that possibility for all 3, if he's willing to explore that possibility.
Yep. I would say when I was a caseworker 16 years ago, dads were not involved. We did not put that within our practice. It was really putting a lot of practice, and we still have a lot of work to do, but working with dads was kind of a secondary thought. It was really getting mom to where she needed to get the children back. And then the last several years, I would say in the last 7-8 years, dads have been very prevalent, and rightfully so. Even in the state of South Dakota, there's been changes. It may not feel like a lot, but there's been changes in the state, especially one where when the department had become involved, we rightfully did not have to tell the other parent that their child was working with the Department of Social Services. So last year, Senate Bill number 5 was passed, saying that if the department is involved with your child, regardless if we have custody or not, that other parent can be notified. That's huge, very, very huge. And so there's a little bit of some things onto that, but there's been some changes with interacting with those with dads. So here's the thing is with Department of Social Services, we work with all parents, and our goal is to work with all parents equally. So all the services that we are providing for mom, we should be providing to all the dads, if not the same, but very, very similar. And I'll tell you, some of the resources are a little bit harder for dads because a lot of our resources like Head Start and stuff, they're doing great with dads, but it's still very mother friendly. But it's really, we work with dads. They have that right to work toward. They have their own case plan. If they're in a position that they can have their children, we definitely support that. It's still going through the court. The judge makes the final decision of who has that full custody for that child. Sometimes it's not going to be the mom, sometimes it's the dad, or sometimes dad is fine. He wants to be a support to mom. Maybe Brent will be this person that's going to help Emily and be more of that support. So in-home safety plans, again, with that Senate Bill number 5 passing, some of those positives are if we connect with the dad, could he be part of our safety plan? Could he help out? Could he help with visits? All those kinds of things can be really helpful. So we really have shifted in the last, I would say in the last 8 years, in really increasing, enhancing our practice toward dads. It's still a work in progress, but definitely a lot of changes in the Department of Social Services, Child Protection, a lot of work that we do with the dads. It's a little bit hard. I mean, there's a lot of bad labels toward our fathers, deadbeat dad, doesn't want to be. I also kind of see too the unknown. Sometimes we just don't know that dad well enough. And so sometimes when we're unknown, that's kind of scary as well. But I am pretty proud with our department that we've done a lot of work in enhancing our practice with fathers. So we have children that came into care, and a lot of times people are like, what happens when a child comes into care? It is totally chaos. It is busy, busy, busy when we go into the office. The next day, I have the family service specialist. They're on their computer. They're writing up the affidavit. I have the family service specialist aide, probably trying to arrange visits between the parents and the mom. Sometimes we're calling stakeholders. I'm calling the state's attorney. We're trying to notify professionals at the school, saying, hey, that child. So there's a lot of different components and a lot of communication that has to be in. And we try to do the best that we can to get that information in. We love our foster parents. They definitely help us out. Sometimes they're the ones calling the school or WIC because we can't get to them as fast enough as we can, or locating daycare. So there's just so much going on in the first couple days for family service specialists to get things under and prepared. But a lot of it is just getting into the court. We have court probably within 2 days, if not that day or that following day. So just a lot of things going on and making sure the children's needs, making sure that we got all of our stuff. Just very, very quickly, the court process, we have what's called a 48-hour hearing. So when a child goes into custody, that's intake. So we call the judge that evening. The judge listens to why they feel that the department needs to have temporary legal and physical custody. Judge Elser tends to grant it, we get granted, and then the following day, if not the following day after, we have what's called a 48-hour hearing or an emergency hearing. And that emergency hearing, the judge will hear the facts to why the child came into care, and then they'll make a decision if the child continues to be in care. And then we have an advisory hearing, and we may have a couple review hearings, but we get to a point what's called an adjudicatory hearing within 60 days. That's actually could be a big trial. The adjudicatory hearing is a hearing that will now establish, was the child abused and neglected by the parent under the South Dakota state law? So sometimes we have testimony and sometimes we don't. And then we have a review hearing every 60 to 90 days until up to the 12 to 15 month for a dispositional. So up to that 12 month, the Department of Social Services has to make a recommendation to the judge to say, hey, we're at the point that we can return the children or not return the children. Now, children can be returned back to mom and dad sooner than 12 months, but we have up to 12 months. The 12-month mark supports our ASPA, our Adoption Safe Families Act, where children are, the goal is not to have children linger in the foster care system. The dispositional is so we can have a permanency goal for the children, have a permanency for them if that's reunification, adoption, or guardianship. And just a couple of things, a lot of our court hearings around Brookings, I'm not sure about Watertown if this has improved or not, but a lot of times we'll have court or court is scheduled and then they continue it or there's delays. So that can kind of really be a challenge in permanency for children when court hearings are delayed. And hearings too, amazingly, there a lot of them, the majority of them are really up to 15 minutes, if not 3 to 4 days. I just got really spooked because somebody got my garbage. Sorry, you like scared the heck out of me. All right. So what can we do as a child welfare system? We are a team. So we are a team. Provide us with information. So with family service specialists, it's not even just the advocates, our foster parents, our school counselors, our school teachers, nonprofits, everybody who has a piece to this, to the family or to the children, bring that information to the family service specialist. So the family specialist is hearing a lot of different opinions and things that are going around. My staff is incredibly busy. And so I'm sure if once you are assigned a case with CASA, I know that a lot of times it's hard to get a hold of a family service specialist. I ask them how you can get a hold of them, if text, emails, what is the best way to communicate, or schedule a time is another thing as well. Just because they can't always return those calls right away. We're a rural community, so a lot of my family service specialists are on the road and sometimes on the road for an hour or more. Typically, I'm in the office quite a bit, and so a lot of my family service specialists are super comfortable. They'll say, let Christine know, or CC if there's something that I need to get a hold, or you can call me as well if you just need a quick answer to a question that you have. If a child's not getting what they need, think about ways you could help. We so appreciate help. My staff is very much, if you feel a child needs help getting to school on time, or if you can help our foster families, I just would love it. If you feel that, hey, I can provide extra tutoring for a child, or I can help supervise a sibling visit, we are very open to some of your suggestions of help, because what we want is the children's quality of life to be the best they can during this period of time that they're displaced from their families. Work with families before they come to child protection's attention. So we do this training for all stakeholders. Our goal is for children not to be under my caseload. So we really would like to work with families and enhance and support those counseling or mental health facilities, working with families so children do not come into the system. Understand everyone, and this is what helps me, especially if someone is in disagreement, or because it's the fact of life, we're not always going to agree, but I always put into the point that their opinion is based off because they really care for the family, they care for the mom or the dad and the children, and so they're expressing their opinion for the best interest for the family as a whole. So CPS, we try our best to take every opinion into consideration while ensuring the child can be safe. And I always talk to my family service specialists as you do the best that you can, you're making the best decisions. We're not always going to make people happy, but we can definitely work with people so that we can do the best we can for the children. Also respect parents' rights to privacy and confidentiality. I just had this just recently, and there's a misconception sometimes with a department when we have custody of the children. It's a little bit different than maybe a divorce proceeding, or grandma or grandpa has guardianship of their child. With the department, when we have temporary legal and physical custody of the child, we are in partnership with the parents. They still have parental rights, which means is that the parents have right to say how their children for their medical education and their visits. And so it's very important that we respect the parents' rights to their own privacy and their own confidentiality, but understand they have rights. I had a teacher ask me saying, oh, so does the parents have the final say on what they want with the child's IEP? I said, well, not necessarily final say, but they do have a say. And I think as a team, then we have to take in consideration what's in the best interest of the child. But who really has the final say? It's really the judge. Tell you what you need to know to help you provide for the family or the children you are working with. So again, we respect you, we hear your concerns, your opinions, and we hear your recommendations. Also, a family service specialist, we do what's called child assessments. We look at education, medical, mental health, dental, and vision. I'm just going to go quickly through these couple slides about trauma and adverse childhood experiences, because I know you guys are get a lot of this type of training through CASA, which is awesome. But it's really important for us to understand trauma and how that may impact not only the children, but even their parents. And so what I'm talking about is if we have children that I have a stomach ache or a headache, they're not feeling good, or maybe it's like, I don't know if I can believe you. It's just kind of some of those things where it could be trauma based. And some of those behaviors, for example, I don't sleep at night and wander around the house and hide food, is thinking about that child's trauma. I worry when I will eat again, or if my creepy uncle will come into my room. Again, here, behaviors that's under trauma. And that kind of helps us serve our children, especially. So I would always recommend really being educated on trauma-informed type practices and how we can help the children, and also educate the public too when working with children that have been exposed to significant trauma. With that said, we also have to consider the parents that we work with as well, for they have suffered from trauma. So a lot of their behaviors or their decision-making can more than likely be trauma based as well. So understanding that parents also have suffered through that, and it helps us as family service specialists is how do we respond and work and with that empathy as well with working with families. So just to take a moment, what can you do? So some thoughts to you guys. What are some things that come through your mind? What can you do to help as a child welfare system? What are some things that can be helpful, or with your program with CASA or fostering, or even as a community member? What are some things that are out there that could help the child welfare system? We're not perfect, but you got what you got. And there's always room for growth, improvement.
I think one of the things I've learned recently is to listen and to try and talk to people you might not otherwise talk to hear the needs, because I think I didn't realize how many people wanted to help but didn't know how. And so when you do listen and hear the need and can share it with someone else that might be able to fill the need, you can sort of be a connection point, and that seems like a good spot for a CASA volunteer to be in as well. I've just been overwhelmed with how quickly I've found people willing and wanting to help in areas that are of need if I just connect to where those are. So I got that from your presentation a lot.
Awesome. What are other thoughts that can come to mind? And I appreciate you, Tara, for the foster closet in our area, which is such a need. So that's part of the child welfare system is maybe it's not being an advocate or a foster family, but it's knowing that we have families of need and being able to provide in one way or another. So as you guys are going through your journey for being an advocate or fostering, what are some things that come to mind that would help with the child welfare system?
Or staff for you.
I can add one more thing too. When I was at the club, one of the things that I felt like is sometimes we got forgotten in the system. We were a pretty big part of the kids' lives, but we weren't school doctor, we weren't on the list you shared, Christine. You have so many people you have to call. And so I think thinking about being a CASA volunteer and thinking about all those kind of extra things, if kiddos have coaches that they're working with or different after school programs, that was a really key piece that sometimes we didn't find out about until days later. And there were obviously some behaviors and reactions and things that we could have maybe been a little bit more proactive on as a group if we had known. So just being helpful in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Dean, do you know there's a program they were piloting, I believe in Rapid? I know Tim Toomey up here is talking about doing it, where when a child is removed, you notify school. You don't tell them what happened. You just say, like, today would be a good day to have soft touch with John Johnson. So
Yes.
they know something happened.
Yeah, I think Dana Martin was looking into that type of program and I was pretty supportive of it. I don't know how, if it ended or it just kind of dissipated. But it regardless if DSS was involved either. So it was kind of a program where if a law officer came or, came or did a welfare check or something, anything, if it was DSS related or not DSS related, that they would be able to connect with the school to say, hey, this child had an interesting evening.
Yes, any emergency like fire, rescue,
Yep.
police, let the school know. I think that soft touch would help, some of those people pay a little more attention to maybe behaviors that day.
Oh yeah, because if they didn't know, and I truly agreed with Dana that if you don't know, you wouldn't understand why this child is more hyper today or maybe a little bit more sassy today, and it caused more of a layer of trauma when it comes to it.
I think that the biggest thing that I've heard and connected through your presentation and the other trainings that we've done, two things kind of really resonate with me is one, tying back to your question of, what can we as CASA volunteers do to help, is one, trying to keep the child's life as normal as possible. And that goes to, getting to know the children, their interests, their activities, and then trying to incorporate and have some sense of normalcy and stability in their lives. And then the second thing that really just hit home for me today in your presentation is really the collaboration and teamwork. And that is so important to the success of the work that you do, the work that we do, the work that the court system does. And that in order to even achieve the first thing I was talking about, that can best be done by collaboration and teamwork, tying back to what you were saying, if we can help get the kid to school on time or, coordinate sibling visits, to help that coordination and teamwork, I think, is the biggest thing that hit home for me today.
Well, I appreciate that, which I want to share. One of the advocates in Madison, who has the same name as Amy, she was so good about signing up the baby for swimming lessons. And, we don't have time for that. We don't have time. And then the foster family were just as busy. But what was beautiful about the activity was that mom could participate in it. So I thought that was super cool. And amazingly enough, I like that you said, Stacy, just to enhance the quality of life for these kids is supporting them in their sports. And because a lot of times these kids will not have that opportunity to do sports or even be supported in any of their sports or activities or theater or anything like that. But I do find that when we have foster children that are involved with the clubs and arts or sports, they tend to do a little better. But it really does take an effort. I think about Samantha Himley. She does an awesome job, but I'm sure Samantha, you would love to have someone help take someone to soccer or here or there, if that's the case.
Sometimes, yes, it would be really great.
If that's the case. So yeah, and that just enhances everybody's, the child and the family and the support system when it comes to.
Well, and CASA guys, remember, if you're doing those activities with these kids, that's your time spent with them. I would rather see you go to their football game and watch them and cheer, maybe invite mom or dad along and spend, because that's your time. You can talk on your report about how the child's doing, how they felt. Mom and dad are interacting, they're showing up. That's positive parenting. And that's what we want to see. I'd rather see you do that than take lunch and go to school and have a very uneventful hour or half an hour with them. Just say, how are you doing? I mean, go do something fun with these kids. And if you can, pull in parents, get some visit time in. That is what it's all about, I think, is spending that time with our kiddos. So
I also want to bring up, I'm thinking of you, Terry, as well, but mentoring parents, if you feel comfortable with that, taking the parents to grocery shop with their baby, even though that might seem kind of weird, it is an incredible parental skill to help and assist. Because sometimes parents don't know exactly what to purchase or buy, or how to kind of maintain sanity with children, or how to react if the child is doing a temper tantrum. Those are awesome things that you need to share with us, even cultural. If there's a cultural connection, we love to have that help as well for children too. So
Yeah, we have a CASA up here right now who's doing one of the kids has to have a certain, I don't know what it is, but they actually went with the parents and helped find menu recipes, and then went grocery shopping, and there was some special stuff they needed. So CASA paid for it because it was out of their budget, because it's a really weird food thing and it's a little more spendy. And so the CASA volunteers taking time to teach these parents to cook.
Yep.
For their child's special needs, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
I went to a training once where they talked about the importance of teaching parents to comparison shop, because people a lot of times don't have a lot of money, and they're picking a lot of times the most expensive things without realizing they could get more, and it would be more cost effective if they got actually healthier things.
We're lucky up here, Rebecca. We have a life skills class that's really good
Really?
up this way. And so we
That's
will
great.
talk to our parents and say, hey, let's get you in, and we help them call and get them set up so that they're doing the life skills. It does checkbook, budget, food, everything.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, I just want everybody to kind of just start thinking about how you can participate, and it can be major and it can be minor. But just a couple things is all being educated in that trauma inform and understand. We talked about homework, being a CASA volunteer, help with transportation would be, helpful. Our foster parents would love any of the help that you can. And just enhancing the quality of life for parents and children. If you understand that children do love their parents, and that can be really hard sometimes depending on the situation or the case, and that it's really important and be supportive of family time with their parents, no matter how that is. Understand that fathers may not have a choice of being involved in their child's life. Help provide information. I think I had an advocate he was a male, and he was going to help a single dad. And those are things that are so incredibly important with our child welfare system. It really does take a team. So just quickly, I'm almost done. We have what's called impending danger threats. So I talked in the beginning about present danger, but what keeps DSS involved with a family is that we have threats, or we have a child that's in a state of danger. So these are definitions, impending danger threats, to why we continue to work with the family. And this needs to be eliminated before we can actually move out of that case, or say we're no longer involved with the family. But these are impending danger threats. We can't place children back with mom and dad, even though we have impending danger threats that we're trying to eliminate. And that's called the safety analysis. This gives us an opportunity to kind of look at what's going on with the family. Can we encompass a safety plan? Can we have people be a safety plan provider? So some things that we think about is, can we substitute, control, manage that impending danger if the children are back in the home? Can we do that? Do we have what's necessary to support the family, go through what they need to go through, but support the family? So these are these questions that we ask ourselves. It's called the safety analysis questions. Please ask your family service specialist and say, hey, can we look at that safety analysis questions to the reasons why or why not the children are placed with their families or not placed with their families. So it's called a safety plan. We can implement a safety plan. It can be as active as long as the impending danger exists and the caregiver protective capacities are insufficient. So for example, maybe again, we have a grandparent that agrees to come in the morning to help get the kids up and get ready for school. If that's a really tough time for mom and she can't do it, or she's whatever that thing is, or maybe mom and dad's temptation to use is during the weekend, can we implement a plan where the children are always in respite on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we have monitoring during the week. It just kind of depends. Every family is a little different, but those are things that we're thinking about. How can we have the children be back in the home, but to be safe in the home? And that's what the family service specialists are always thinking. So what can you do as a part of your child welfare system? As a CASA volunteer, we kind of do look at you guys as a safety plan provider. We trust your assessment. If there's some things that you're not feeling comfortable with, if you're having visits with mom and dad, please share that information with us. We also, I think all of us understand that it takes a lot of time for parents, that behavior changes aren't going to happen right away. It does take time for those things to occur. Know that as long as children are safe and a safety plan can be implemented, children can return home while the parents continue to work on their behavioral changes. As I do my job, that's probably the most where it can be really, even for us, for a family service specialist, when we make the decision for children to return home, it is a very, very fragile time. And it's also a time that we want to make sure that we got everything in place and make sure that the plan is sufficient. And so it is a nervous time. We want your support for the families to be together, because it's what I typically see is when children are returned with their families, the chances of the case going progressively being better, and also with the case closing with the court, seems to happen more quickly. Is there times where there's a relapse or something occurs that the children are displaced from their parents again? Absolutely, it does happen. But we really try really hard to have those safety plans be as safe as possible. Inform the family service specialist if you have any information which can impact the direction of the case, email, text, especially if it's emergent, that's something very important. Please let us know right away. And remember, it is the court which makes the final decision whether the children return home based on the information provided to the court. So the judge always makes that final decision in the court. And I look at our judges, when they look at our court report, and a lot of our judges respectfully look at the CASA report. Your report to the judge is incredibly important. And I know they look at your reports and they make their decisions based on DSS as well as CASAs. So that is it for me. You're very much welcome to email me or call me if you have any questions. An hour and a half, I did it.
Thank you. It was really interesting, I thought.
But thank you for allowing me to talk about child welfare is an incredibly complex system. And I think that's why I like it. That's why I like the job I do. And I believe in families. I think you cannot do this job if you do not believe that families need to be together. But keep in mind that I have seen terminations. I've supported that. But it just is wonderful because we never see that in the news, right? We never see those families that are reunited, and how proud it is. I mean, I love the pictures with the moms and dads hugging family service specialists at the end of a long, long road. But I also have worked with families where mom and dad gave up their rights because they took the courageous route. And those are sad and happy times too. So a lot of different emotions and stuff. The other thing too is support each other. Family service specialists, we are exposed to a lot of stuff. I know you guys are. And so we want to take care of each other and, make sure to, if you need a coffee or you need a vent, go right ahead. And I hope you give that respect to family service specialists, because sometimes they don't even want to talk to the case, but you can tell. I appreciate you, Amy, when you just need to give them a little hug or a touch, because to tell you the truth, this job is hard. It's absolutely hard. And one of the things about secondary trauma is not only working with families, but it's also stakeholders. My group of gals, I love them to death. I've had awesome caseworkers, but they're seeking out your opinion as well and support. And like I said, we're not always going to agree, but don't have that define our relationship. Right, Terry?
That's right. It's true.
Absolutely,
No.
absolutely.
And I will say for a fact, I don't think I could have done my career without the advocates in my life. I can name with like Jean Josted, if some of you know, I adored her. She probably doesn't even remember who I am. But there have been awesome people in my life that supported me in my career. And it wasn't my boss obviously was, but a lot of my stakeholders, a lot of counselors, advocates. And so I want you guys to think about that, because you can be an impression to some of the caseworkers that you work with. Because like I said, I don't think I could do a lot of my work without, and I can name several of the advocates that have been very pivotal in my career
Mhm.
and learning experience. So, but it's a hard job, definitely a hard job.
Yeah, it is. And it absolutely is a team effort. There's no way for it not to be, when you're trying to approach it in a very strength-based, very positive manner. That's what's best for kids. Just like, parenting and united in parenting is what's healthiest for kids, right? And so all the partners, all the stakeholders, all of us, it works beautifully when you're sharing information and when you're lifting each other up. If you need to vent, or you really just need to talk out loud and process, and certainly Terry and I try to provide a lot of that support to all our CASA volunteers. But Christine, you've heard me say this, and it's absolutely true. And Terry can speak to the Watertown DSS folks far better than I can, but they're great to work with. So you new incoming volunteers, be assured that the workers, Christine's team, is just very wonderful to work with. They're lovely people, and you are too. And your heart is in the right place. And that's what it's really all about, is just coming together, supporting families and kids. Our role is probably much more specific to, truly the child's best interest. But of course that involves family. So it's circular. It comes right back to research, evidence-based, that what's best for kids is that family unity, if it's safe and possible to do that. And so we're all part of that. And every case is so different. It's messy,
Very messy.
incredibly difficult decisions. And so there's no way that we can provide all of you more analytical, concrete thinkers with step 1, step 2, step 3. It's the whole toolbox of stuff, because it's families are not, they're human beings. And so cases can be very, very different. So that's my little spiel. Thank you though, Christine. You're awesome. And your team is great.
Yeah, and we appreciate, and the other thing too is your opinions do matter, and we do take that in. And I think it's important that we voice what we feel is in the best interest of the child. And because if we don't, we're not going to see changes in the child welfare system, right? There's a reason why children are encouraged to be together as siblings, because that didn't happen before. There's a reason why we are pushing children to be with their relatives as soon as possible, because it didn't happen before. There's a reason why ICWA continues to be such a pinnacle federal law, and such a wonderful law, because it supports culture and thing, because that didn't happen before for kids. So we're still continuing to grow, even the dads, like in my own, like I just shared with, in my own career, When I started off, dads were not part of case planning. Dads were not part of case planning. We did not give a case plan to dads. And then all of a sudden we did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Because I love my husband. I'm like, yeah, my husband should have a right to see his kids. And Senate Bill 5 just passed last year. I think I would be pissed if DSS was involved with my kids and I didn't even know about it. It's, yeah, so you have to voice what you think because that's how changes occur. But thank you so much. Amy, did you take me off the hosting or so I can leave?
I am, let's see. I think you have to
Oh,
do,
do I have to do it? I think
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, there you go. Now you're the host, Amy.
perfect.
I just wanted to say thanks, guys, for letting us jump on quick. I got to tuck the little ones in bed. They're waiting on me, but I wanted to say thanks for letting me jump in. It was a lot of good information.
Have a good
Thanks
night,
for joining
Joan.
us.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. This was extremely helpful to hear that perspective inside and the role of CPS and all of this. It really helped close a lot of gaps for me. So this was extremely helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions before we let Christine? She's had a long work day, I'm sure. So she's very accessible, as she said, and that is true. So along the whole journey, once you're assigned to cases, we can talk more about that too.
Mhm. And Amy's
No, thank
great.
you. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate Amy. We keep in touch, and Amy's great connecting with family service specialists. And honestly, if our reports, they can be a little weird and complex. I'm just going to say that. So if you need a little bit of guidance, like where was that frame of thought in a way, definitely come, we can educate in what that role so that we can support the goal for those families if needed. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Great.
Thanks, Christine.
All right. Thank you.
Well, how's everybody doing? That was a shebang, wasn't it? We ended with a grand finale.
Are we by chance able to get copies of the PowerPoints that were shown tonight? Or are there some that we can't get copies of?
Well, Amy was the first one. The one from Christine, I mean, you could probably ask. I don't know why she
Okay,
wouldn't
yeah.
have it.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, Amy, if you get them, will you shoot them out to either me and I can get them to all my students? And you
Yeah,
can shoot them to the volunteers.
I have the one, that Kathy did.
Yep.
And so absolutely, I can make sure.
The foster parents, Jojo asked for it too, but if you shoot it to me, I can shoot it off. Sam would probably like it. I mean, we could probably send to Deb and Marla and tell them to send it out.
Good
I'd
idea.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So what do we need to wrap up here? Our last, not quite half hour.
I don't think we need to unless anyone has questions. I think our next step is getting you guys sworn in. Do you got your paperwork in? Do you got your pictures to Amy and me so we can get your badges made? Just kind of some of that finalization so we can finish running everyone and just get you ready to roll. Training's done. Unless there's something you feel like you're missing that we can, get more info to you somehow. Does everybody feel like we cannot, you're gonna have questions. I don't think we can answer them all. But I think you all have enough to start and work with us, me and Amy, to get you rolling, and you'll be fine. You got the basic toolbox and the soft skills to start doing some of that stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, Terry and I have said this, but until you are actively having discussion with us and you get assigned to a case after you're sworn, when we say we do ongoing support, coaching, I spent probably several hours of my day today with new volunteers, the class right before you folks. So they started in June and the training ended in July, and circling back around and breaking down their cases. Some of them just, needed that. I mean, that's to be expected, and that's what we do. So it's not like, well, here you go, good luck. So, and everyone is different. Some people, you go out charging out the gate and you really don't want us pestering you, Others want to check in every few days or have questions. So, we're there for you, and you will see that. You
We're
will see
still
that.
gonna pester you though, because we need to
Yeah,
know what's
that's true.
doing. So,
Yeah, it's true. But some just need it. Oh, go ahead.
Logistically, will you just let us know if you need anything? Like, do you have everything from me? You'll let us know if you're waiting on something from us.
Yeah, I'll do a follow-up. I'm sure Terry does the same thing, but I will do a follow-up after the training, and we'll set up a time to get you sworn in and all of that. So, the next, I always say it can easily be like a 10-day, and Terry and I are gone the end of this week for the conference in Sioux Falls. So, a week, 2-week window for sure is probably what you can expect.
Well, I just want to say, I feel like I've learned a lot from all of the training that I've never heard from before. And I just appreciate everybody's efforts in putting together the training, and you and Terry and all the speakers and the other people in the group.
thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you all, not everyone is willing to even do what you're willing to do. It is not just easy. And so we just really can't demonstrate our heartfelt appreciation for each one of you. Sincerely. So, if not for us, who is truly going to be the voice for kids, really at the end of the day. So thank you. But yeah, that's kind of what you can expect when we end our session here tonight, and we'll do follow-ups with you. And if there's something missing, we'll let you know that, like a document or copy of an insurance card or something. So we will definitely be in contact with you about that. And thank you for all your hard work. It's been a lot of hours that you've squeezed into your busy life. So you should be commended for that. All right. Any last minute questions? I'm so proud of all of you. I always feel like this maternal, like my little chicks are ready to go out in the world.
Yeah, I just want to echo the appreciation for the training and the different training methods that you guys incorporated, and just even like the case studies you guys sent out and played out. Like, that was so helpful to hear. Just even you guys play out the initial call. It was phenomenal. And that you did multiple and speakers and videos and just in articles, and just the whole, it wasn't all just one thing. So just want to share my appreciation for the various methods and the flexibility, and I felt like it was really good base level training across the board, and definitely feel like you said, we have the resources to back us up as we have questions. I don't feel like an expert by any means, but I feel like I have a really good base level knowledge, and I know where to go with questions.
Well,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, Terry and I are always, we spend a lot of time in between training sessions, and we try to come up with different, people learn differently, and adult learners, are very different than children and teenagers and how they learn. So, you know, we appreciate that feedback.
Well, all right then. Have a good night, everybody.
Right,
Talk to
thank
you soon. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.